Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to, cut through some of the noise around arts education. It's a long-running debate, isn't it?
It really is, especially when budgets get tight. The big question always comes up. Is it just art for art's sake?
Or does it genuinely build those skills we talk so much about, for innovation, for the modern economy?
Exactly, and that's the core tension in the sources we looked at. You have policymakers, educators, parents. Many deeply believe the arts foster creativity, problem solving, all those 21st century skills.
Well, it feels intuitive, right?
It does, but proving it empirically, showing that direct causal link, what researchers call transfer, that's much harder.
So for this deep dive, we're relying heavily on a big OECD overview.
That's right, titled Art for Art's Sake. It digs into decades of empirical evidence, going way back to the 1950s, trying to see what the data actually says about that link.
Okay, so where do we start? To understand innovation, we probably need to get the basics of creativity down first.
Good idea. Let's start with the psychological framework. J.P. Guilford, back in 1956, he coined two key terms, convergent thinking and divergent thinking.
CT and DT.
Yep, and they're essentially opposites. Convergent thinking, CT, is, well, it's logical, it's structured, it's about finding that single correct answer.
Like on a multiple choice test.
Exactly like that. Great for organization, quick decisions when there's one right answer.
But innovation, that feels different. That seems more aligned with the other one, divergent thinking.
Precisely. Divergent thinking, or DT, is the messy one. It's spontaneous, free-flowing, nonlinear. It's about exploring many possible solutions, making unexpected connections.
That sounds much more like creativity.
It's the engine room, really. It helps you see new opportunities, get into that creative flow, consider things from multiple angles.
And the sources mention ways to encourage this, not necessarily formal art classes.
Right, simple things, actually, like dedicated brainstorming sessions, keeping a journal, free writing where you just let thoughts flow, even just doodling or creating some kind of artwork on your own.
Activities that let your mind wander a bit.
Yeah, break out of those rigid tracks. And this is important right from the start, in early childhood.
How so?
Well, the research suggests DT encourages playfulness in kindergartners, things like spontaneity, joy, humor. And in preschoolers, it seems to improve deductive reasoning
How does it do that?
by pushing them beyond the most obvious answer to think, okay, what else could it be? It trains that mental flexibility early on.
Okay, that makes sense. But you mentioned something really interesting, almost counterintuitive, about how robust these thinking modes are. Something about sleep.
Ah, yes, this was quite striking. The research indicates that even just one night of sleep loss can significantly impair your divergent thinking performance.
Really? Just one night?
Significantly. But convergent thinking tasks, those find the right answer ones, they were much more resilient to that short-term sleep deprivation.
Wow. So the very thinking skill we link to innovation is surprisingly fragile.
It seems so, which really underlines why we can't just leave its development to chance. We need to actively cultivate it.
Which brings us right back to that core question in the OECD review. If DT is so important but fragile, can formal arts education give it a boost? Can it provide that causal, transferable improvement to other skills?
That's the million-dollar question. Skills like technical abilities, social skills, even general academic grades. What did the researchers find when they looked for actual transfer?
Did they find it?
Well, first, they ran smack into the correlation trap, especially with multi-arts education. So, students taking various arts courses.
What's the trap there?
The data, particularly from the US, consistently shows a correlation. Students taking more arts courses tend to have better grades, higher test scores, higher educational attainment overall.
Okay, sounds good so far.
But it's just a correlation. It doesn't prove the arts caused the success.
Right, correlation isn't causation. What else could explain it?
Several things. Maybe families who value education highly encourage both academic success and arts participation. Or simple self-selection bias. Students who are already good at school, maybe more organized or motivated, might just have more time, energy, or inclination to sign up for arts classes. They succeed with the arts, not necessarily because of them.
So how do they test that? Do they try to isolate the arts effect?
They did. They used experimental or quasi-experimental designs, trying to control for those other factors. And when they did that, the causal link for multi-arts impacting general academic attainment largely disappeared.
Ah, so just taking a mix of arts classes doesn't automatically boost your grades, according to these controlled studies.
Not in a clearly demonstrable causal way, no. The correlation seems stronger than the causation there.
Okay, so if multi-art is tricky, did they find anywhere where the causal link The transfer was actually strong and clear.
Yes. One area stood out consistently in the review: music education.
Music. Interesting. What did they find specifically?
Music instruction showed measurable causal impacts. It seems to strengthen general IQ, improve overall academic performance, boost phonological awareness, which is key for reading.
Phonological. Like hearing the sounds in words.
Exactly, and even improving the ability to distinguish speech in a noisy environment. Real cognitive benefits.
Okay, those are pretty specific upgrades. Do they know why music seems to work where other arts were less clear?
The sources suggest a couple of key mechanisms. First, the auditory skills. Learning music trains your ear, basically, which directly helps with processing language, both spoken and written.
Makes sense. And the second?
The second is that music practice often mirrors traditional schooling. You have to read notation, concentrate for periods, practice diligently, follow structured lessons.
So it trains general good student skills, discipline, focus.
Precisely. Skills that naturally help across the board in school, boosting IQ and overall performance. It has that built-in structure.
Okay, so music has a strong case, but what about the skills people most associate with the arts? Creativity itself, critical thinking. You said that was the main hope.
Right. And unfortunately, the evidence for direct causal transfer from general arts education to general creativity or critical thinking skills, it's largely inconclusive.
Inconclusive. Why? Is it just hard to measure?
That's part of it,
Yeah.
definitely. Measuring creativity is notoriously difficult. Often they use these domain general tests like the Torrance test.
And one's like, how many uses can you think of for a paperclip?
Exactly. Which, arguably measures a certain kind of cleverness, but does it capture the depth of artistic creativity or a fundamental shift in thinking? Probably not fully.
Seems limited,
But there's a bigger issue the researchers pointed to beyond just measurement:
which is,
teaching quality. This came up again and again. It's not just about what subject you teach, but how you teach it.
yeah.
A really well-taught science class can absolutely foster creativity, curiosity, critical analysis, and conversely, a poorly taught art class, maybe just focused on rote copying, might do nothing for creativity at all.
So the subject label art isn't magic.
Not automatically. The transfer doesn't just happen by osmosis because students are in an art room. It seems to depend heavily on intentional teaching of those creative and critical thinking skills within the arts context.
Okay, that's a crucial point. If transfer isn't automatic, if it depends on how it's taught, then the focus needs to shift away from just assuming it happens towards deliberately designing for it.
Exactly. How do schools intentionally fuse arts practices with academic content to cultivate those innovation skills? This moves us from the research findings towards pedagogical solutions.
And the sources gave examples of this working in practice.
Yes, the concept of arts-infused project-based learning, or PBL, is a key example. School 21 in London was highlighted.
What do they do differently?
They structure learning around major projects, and crucially, these are often co-taught by a core academic teacher and an art specialist.
Co-taught, so a history teacher and a drama teacher working together on the same unit.
Precisely. Their rationale is that the arts are inherently project-based anyway. Think about it: painting, composing, rehearsing a play. It's all about working towards an authentic performance or product, usually involving lots of drafts and critique.
That makes sense.
Well,
Art isn't usually a one-shot deal.
Right. So they lean into that. There's a huge emphasis on process, on redrafting, on iteration, striving for what they call beautiful work. It's not just about getting the answer right. It's about refining the work to a high standard.
That sounds demanding. Potentially messy, too, compared to standard lessons. How do they ensure it stays rigorous and doesn't just become, fun but fluffy?
They have structures for that. One key thing is the tuning protocol.
Tuning protocol, what's that?
It's basically a structured critique session, but for the teachers. Before and during a project, the teaching team presents their plan to other staff members for rigorous feedback. They tune the project itself to ensure it meets both academic and artistic standards.
Wow, so the quality control is built in for the teachers, too. That's serious.
Very serious. It keeps the projects ambitious and meaningful.
And we saw some really concrete examples of this kind of integration in those K-6 curriculum guides too, right?
Huh?
Things linking specific arts activities to core subjects.
Absolutely. Really creative stuff. Like in grade 3, using dance and movement phrases to explore mathematical concepts like fractions or rhythmic patterns.
So literally embodying the math.
Exactly. Or in grade 5, using theater techniques like tableau, creating frozen scenes to analyze the causes and conflicts of historical events. Imagine using that for the Boston Tea Party, showing the different perspectives and tensions physically.
That sounds way more engaging than just reading about it.
It makes it visceral. And another great one, grade 4 visual arts and science. Students create clay tiles, using both adding clay and carving it away.
Additive and subtractive sculpting.
Right. And they explicitly link those techniques to geological processes, how Earth's surface is reshaped by forces like erosion. The art process directly models the science concept.
That's not just art alongside science. That's art as a way of understanding science. True integration.
That's the goal. But even with these powerful examples, it's crucial to remember the fundamental point the sources make about the art's value.
Which is?
That beyond any transfer benefits, the arts are simply a major, essential domain of human experience and knowledge. Just like science, math, or history, they have intrinsic value.
They're important in their own right, regardless of whether they boost test scores.
Absolutely. That's the core justification. We need them because they explore what it means to be human.
That's a powerful argument. Though I have to say that nugget about career outcomes provides a pretty strong practical argument too.
Ah, yes, the data on arts graduates. That was interesting. One study found that arts graduates were among the most likely 54% to be in a highly innovative job 5 years after graduating.
Second highest group for product innovation, I think. They even mentioned Apple's iPod design.
They did, suggesting those skills learned in arts, aesthetics, user experience, perhaps that iterative design process translate directly into commercial innovation.
Okay, so where does this leave us in terms of future research? If the evidence for broad transfer is patchy, but integration and intrinsic value are key, what do we need to study next?
Well, first, just more high-quality research is needed. The OECD review noted a real scarcity, sometimes only around 13 methodologically sound studies per specific outcome they looked at.
13. That's not a lot to base policy on.
Not really, and researchers argue we need better theoretical frameworks. Maybe stop chasing just general academic uplift and focus more on the specific habits of mind the arts cultivate.
Habits of mind. Like what?
Things like comfort with ambiguity. The arts often don't have single right answers. Also, skills like reflection, metacognition, thinking about your own thinking process, observational skills, persistence through drafts.
Skills essential for innovation, but maybe harder to measure on a standardized test.
Exactly. And related to that, there's a strong call for research into explicit teaching for transfer.
Meaning the teacher has to actively connect the dots for the students.
Yes. Don't just assume they'll see how learning to observe closely in drawing class helps when looking through a microscope in biology. The teacher needs to make that link explicit. Remember how we looked for detail and shadow? Use those same eyes now.
Without that explicit connection, the learning might just stay siloed in the art room.
That seems to be the issue. Methodologically, researchers suggest using more true experimental designs, like randomly assigning classrooms to different types of arts instruction versus control groups.
The gold standard for causality.
Right. And also, maybe measuring something different. Instead of just final achievement, does arts learning lead to greater ease of learning later on in another subject? Does music make grasping math concepts easier down the line? That kind of longitudinal effect.
Fascinating. So, wrapping this up, what's the key takeaway for you, our listener?
I think it's this. While proving direct, causal links between arts education and general test scores is often difficult, maybe, except for music, that doesn't mean arts education isn't incredibly valuable.
It's not just art for art's sake, but the benefits might be more complex than simple score boosts.
Exactly. High-quality, well-taught, integrated arts education clearly cultivates sophisticated thinking, that crucial divergent thinking, plus those vital habits of mind like handling ambiguity, iteration, close observation. Skills absolutely central to innovation.
But the quality and the integration are key. It doesn't happen by magic.
Absolutely not. And maybe the ultimate value comes from the arts being, as one source put it, an arena without right and wrong answers. A space to safely explore, experiment, fail, and refine.
Which is rare in traditional schooling.
Very rare. So, a final thought for you to chew on. If that explicit teaching for transfer is so important, and if the arts excel at teaching processes like iteration and critique, what skill in your own work life could benefit from deliberately applying that artistic process?
Taking that redrafting, tuning protocol approach to something outside the arts.
Why not? Think about that next presentation, that project plan, that difficult conversation. Could rigorously applying critique and iteration make it stronger, more innovative? It's worth considering.
Definitely food for thought. Thank you for sharing these sources and guiding us through this complex topic. Another fascinating deep dive. We'll see you next time.